Sorry?
Your heritage is what?
Oh, I'm just the whitest ever. Yeah, unfortunately. Oh, yeah.
Oh, right. Me too.
He lives in Miami, so he's tan.
Right.
See, if you went outside other than to bars at night, you'd be more tan too.
50 Shades of Grey.
Just
indeed.
last night, though. I was supporting Flockfest. I went to Barrita.
Oh, very cool.
It was great. They were raising money for the Black Pride event that is coming in Miami.
Love that.
There's a new
The Jay McCracken DJ, because I love him.
He did. Jay is really good, too. Well, welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news. It's 7 p.m. Tuesday, February 9th, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your stories we are going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight. The world's first live daily queer evening news show. Out of the closet and into the headlines on Q News Tonight. Well, thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is a live, unedited LGBTQ evening news show. Whatever happens, you're going to see it. This evening, we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ community in South Florida, America, and across our world. I'm your Queer News Tonight anchor, Al Ferguson, and tonight let's welcome anchor David Hopkins. David is an officer of the Lambda Men's Brotherhood, a local charity group that has raised over $200,000 over the past decade for many need organizations in our community. This Sunday, they are presenting Lambda's Love-In-A-Thon. It's a charity variety show stream sponsored by Happening Out Television Network and Underground Wilma. Welcome, David.
Hey guys, hope everybody can tune in starting at 3 p.m. Eastern. You can follow us on It's Happening Out, Underground Wilma on Twitch, or on lmbftl.org.
And a little birdie continues to tell me that you're the new anchor, along with of the new travel show and the travel information.
Yeah, we've got some amazing trips planned out for happeningout.travel. You want to tune in and travel with us.
Yeah, and news. The LGBTQ world is just dying to get back out there again soon.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. Next, let's welcome anchor Dr. Nick McEnany. He is an assistant professor at the University of Miami School of Nursing and Health Studies, as well as a registered nurse. His research focuses on preventing domestic violence and its negative health implications in LGBTQ populations globally. Good evening, and can I call you Dr. Nick?
You may call me Dr. Nick. Thanks so much for having me.
Just like the Simpsons character.
That's right.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We're really glad you're here. Well, tonight we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Tuesday, February 9th. Let's begin by queering up the USA. The White House and Biden stands by their plan to pass the Equality Act within the first 100 days. Watch this.
The cornerstone of the president's promise to the LGBT community was the Equality Act, which would be legislation to expand the prohibition on anti-LGBTQ discrimination. The president said he would sign that legislation within 100 days in office. Does he stand by that?
He stands by it. I would say that there's some actions that need to be taken by Congress, of course, as you know, and we're only on day, what are we on now, 15? Okay, so 16, 17? All right,
yeah.
All right, around there. So we have 85 days to go.
Well, why don't we let the president himself speak out on this legislation?
I think the president has been out speaking out about a range of issues he's committed to, including many on LGBTQ rights over the course of the last 2 weeks of his presidency, and he will continue to be, but I don't have any scheduling updates for you at this point in time.
And now for my colleague.
Well, the White House has confirmed that President Joe Biden is committed to passing landmark LGBTQ rights legislation during his first 100 days. The Equality Act, which was passed by the U.S. House of Representatives in 2019, would prohibit discrimination against LGBTQ people in employment, housing, education, credit, and public accommodations. During the presidential campaign, Biden pledged to pass the Equality Act during his first 100 days in office and spoke about its importance while campaigning. In a briefing this week, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked if the president remained committed to that time frame. Psaki said, quote, "He stands by it. I would say that there's some actions that need to be taken by Congress, of course," end quote. Biden has already taken action to undo some of the anti-LGBTQ actions of the Trump administration, including issuing an executive order on the day he took office protecting LGBTQ from discrimination in the federal government. Several days later, Biden reversed Donald Trump's ban on transgender people serving openly in the military, calling the reversal, quote, "the right thing to do and in our national interest," end quote. Last week, the president committed to the United States to advancing and defending the rights of LGBTQI+ people abroad as part of a series of actions and initiatives designed to realign Americans' foreign policy with respect for human rights and placed increased emphasis on diplomacy. The importance of the Equality Act will create a legislative precedent and will eliminate a Supreme Court making basic decisions based on the will of the current court, now or in the future.
It's so refreshing first to see a press secretary who actually speaks truth and non-absolutes that are made up. But it's also great to have a president who is committed to doing the right thing for all constituents and not just the people who paid to get him in office.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are still 29 states where you can get married on a Saturday and get fired from your job on a Monday, so including right here in Florida. So I think we desperately need legislation like this as soon as possible.
The president's executive order has dramatically expanded rights protections in the United States. President Biden, as we indicated in the show, talking about his international memorandum to the State Department of what the United States is going to do, we said likely Joe Biden, the President of the United States, is the greatest LGBT advocate on this planet today, and maybe in all of history. And when the Equality Act is passed by the President, it will be something that a court cannot take away in local, state, or federal ever in the future. That's why it is so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Here in America, we're getting protections, but next we queer up the world. The Turkish president says LGBTQ people don't exist amid national protests.
Really? They don't exist at all?
Just not in Turkey.
Yeah, just in the bathhouses. Political unrest in Turkey intensified this week as President Erdogan declared that LGBTQ people don't exist. Following numerous demonstrations over the past month that included displays of solidarity with members of LGBTQ+ community, Erdogan said in a televised speech that his country simply does not have any queer or transgender residents. The Turkish president said, quote, "The LGBT, there is no such thing. This country is moral, and it will walk to the future with these values," end quote. The remarks followed similar statements made days earlier in which the authoritarian Turkish leader accused pro-LGBTQ+ activists of committing acts of vandalism and claimed they are destroying the country. He said, quote, "We will carry our young people to the future, not as the LGBT youth, but as the youth that existed in our nation's glorious past," end quote. Over the weekend, an estimated 159 people were arrested, but the detentions only proliferated the days following. 65 people were reportedly rounded up in the last several days alone, with the total number of arrestees now totaling around 600. Public attitudes are generally harsh towards LGBTQ+ people in Turkey, which has no federal laws protecting queer and trans people from discrimination. Human rights groups believe Erdogan's anti-LGBTQ actions are part of an attempt to further consolidate power, a process that accelerated after a failed coup in 2016. Since then, Erdogan has engaged in a systematic purge of officials seen as disloyal. Erdogan enjoyed a close relationship with Donald Trump, but is likely to find a less friendly reception with President Joe Biden, who issued a memo on Thursday affirming the administration's commitment to fighting for LGBTQ equality around the world. In tandem with that pledge, Biden's State Department issued a statement condemning Erdogan's actions. The U.S. State Department said, quote, "We are concerned by detentions of students and other demonstrators and strongly condemn the anti-LGBTQIA rhetoric surrounding the demonstrations," end quote. There is likely a speeding train by the U.S. and European Union against Turkey.
Yeah, I mean, Turkey is an incredibly diverse country, and even though there are no federal protections in Turkey, there are still millions of young Turks who are just aching for more freedoms, both in the press, politically, and for LGBT people.
Yeah, you know, when I was reading this story, of course, we've reported on Turkey, Hungary, Poland, Iran, Myanmar, and Russia repeatedly. When I was listening to this story and Erdogan's comments, I was thinking, what, is this New York City in June of 1969? Mm-hmm. Because that's what the attitudes were in June of 1969 from the police, from political leadership, and the majority of Americans and the majority of New Yorkers that lived in New York City. Education changes this. Turkey needs a lot of education. We finally have a president that's going to help them learn.
Yeah, I mean, Turkish oiler wrestling made me gay, so you know there's plenty of gay people there. Hopefully one day they get the protections so they can live openly.
Absolutely, but you know, we saw from the Arab Spring that the fuse was ignited by young people and by students, and I think that you'll see the same thing here in Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we queer up gay culture. Kyle Krieger relaxes at home in sexy new magazine from Brian Kaminski. At Queer News Tonight, we work very hard to introduce you to artists, painters, writers, photographers, and more to our LGBT diverse community. You've seen Kyle Krieger before, whether it's from his popular YouTube channel, where he vlogs about his life and sometimes shows the world inside his job as a celebrity hairstylist, or from his Instagram of carefully curated images that always have an artistic flair. Then again, maybe it was one of his campaigns he appeared in for brands like Abercrombie and Fitch. Whatever or wherever you've seen him, from his latest new project, you're going to see him. He's showing off a little more. In an Instagram post, Krieger teased the latest issue of At Home with Brian Kaminski. It features him at home, both in and clearly out of his underwear. He notes in the caption to the post that these are the safest images to post, but the full book is 44 pages, including many other photographs. We bring it to your attention because it does represent an interesting facet of the LGBTQ community in life. Check it out on Kyle Krieger and his social media, where you can purchase this special edition issue.
I'm just checking Twitter to see if he has an OnlyFans or some better pictures, but sadly
You know
not.
he does. Honestly, though, he could be in my quarantine bubble. I wouldn't mind a bit.
Oh, man.
He is cute as all get up.
I don't know who he
No
is,
question
but
about
I'd love to see the rest of those
You're
pictures.
going to look him up now. All right, let's queer up health. So Dr. Anthony Fauci visited gay bathhouses and bars to study HIV. Last week, the COVID-19 czar and perhaps the world's leading expert on AIDS and HIV was on NPR's Fresh Air. He brought Queer News Tonight to a complete stop when talking about his early days of studying HIV. During the dawn of the 1980s, Fauci needed to learn. Here's what he said. Quote, I went to the Castro district, I went down to Greenwich Village, and I went to bathhouses to essentially see what was going on. At that moment, my already great respect for Dr. Fauci moved to a 10 on the Richter scale. Quote, this was the very, very early years of the outbreak, he said. We were seeing large numbers of mostly gay men who were formerly otherwise well, who were being devastated by this terrible, mysterious disease. And it was so concentrated in the gay community that I really wanted to get a feel for what was going on there that would lead to this explosion of a sexually transmitted infection. The epidemiologist in me went, oh my goodness, this is the perfect setup for an explosion of a sexually transmitted disease. And the same thing going to the gay bars and seeing what was going on, and it gave me a great insight into the explosiveness of the outbreak of the sexually transmitted disease, unquote. He also noted that then-President Ronald Reagan and his religious rights supporters made HIV and AIDS research a lot harder for him. But he doesn't think Reagan personally hated gay people. Another news moment was how Fauci felt about the AIDS activists targeting him in the 1980s for not doing more to combat the epidemic. Fauci said he understood that it changed him forever. Larry Kramer wrote a famous op-ed calling Fauci a, quote, murderer. Fauci replied, I'll never forget that. He wanted to gain my attention, and he certainly did gain my attention. Fauci and Kramer later became good friends, and today, the LGBTQ community is a good friend of St. And in 2020, the worst year of our lives, even in the darkest days of AIDS, We thank Dr. Fauci for standing up for us in the LGBTQ community.
You know, it's an amazing story. First off, he openly and freely admits, I went into gay bathhouses to see what was going on. And I know for sure he saw what was going on. It's the early 80s. What's amazing about this story is this is a straight man who looked at sexuality blindly and said, this is a medical issue. And in the 1980s, when everyone was so scared of AIDS, everyone had a penchant for discrimination against the LGBTQ community, Dr. Fauci just charged really right into the literal lion's den. 30 years later, we are seeing the exact same situation in COVID-19. The difference is, instead of Reagan, we had Trump. And that's a situation where he stayed in it and stayed in it and stayed in it and continued the fight. Now he's got Biden. Now his voice and the embracement of science is far greater. But we really honestly, as an LGBTQ community, have, beyond COVID, a debt of gratitude to Dr. Anthony Fauci for what he has done for our community.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I appreciate that him and Larry Kramer became friends. I remember when we reported on Larry Kramer's death last year. For those in the audience who may not be familiar with him, he was the founder of ACT UP, which was a major HIV/AIDS rights organization. You know, and he realized that having somebody who knows what they're talking about on your side helps a lot. And Anthony Fauci has always known what he's talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he went into those bathhouses not only whenever it was politically dangerous for him to do so, but also people thought it was dangerous for your health to be around people with HIV, and he put all that aside to help people in our community, and he's done it again with COVID-19, and hopefully we all get our Fauci ouchies soon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. Nick, I want to ask you really quickly, a doctor teaching at the University of Miami, nursing and LGBT-related issues. Your perspective of watching Dr. Fauci, you used in your story St. Fauci, but in the year that you've watched him in terms of how he's tried to contribute and educate the whole community, especially the LGBTQ community, we focused on it so much here at Q. What's your reaction of how Fauci has done in the beginning of the pandemic, and transitioning in the Clorox days and the no mask days and the end of the end of Trump? What have you thought in terms of what you've watched here?
I mean, I've just been incredibly impressed by his stamina, his fortitude. You know, I think a lot of the things that we're hearing from people in the LGBTQ community, especially those who were around during the height of the AIDS pandemic, just like Dr. Fauci, was that this isn't their first rodeo. This is not the first pandemic people have lived through, and he's learned a lot of lessons from the first time around. And I think a lot of people in our community have too. And so, you know, I think he's taking a lot of lessons learned from what happened in the 1980s and into the 90s and applying that to a much larger scale even than the HIV crisis.
And I want to ask you one other question. Your experience in terms of nursing and the politics of the LGBTQ community, masking, the various different kinds of things that have gone on in the COVID-19. We're in the midst of the rollout that has only marginally been successful in the vaccine. What do you expect from your seat and your eye? What do you see next for the LGBTQ community in terms of COVID? What do you think is going to happen next?
I mean, COVID is going to be with us for a long time, right? Even if all of us get our Fauci ouchies and get both doses of the vaccine, COVID-19 is going to be a yearly occurrence for a lot of people, and it's going to fall along racial and economic lines. And so we really need to protect people in our community who are otherwise marginalized by things like race and socioeconomic status and immigration status. And I think if we can keep an eye on that, if we can band together and help each other, creating new opportunities and organizations that are designed to help people who are marginalized, I think we're going to have much better outcomes, and it's going to be a lot easier on our community than if we just look out for ourselves.
And being a young member of the LGBT community, as you watch how we're re-embracing here in South Florida, how we're maybe not being as thorough as we should, maybe we're not following recommendations as we should. What do you think about what you're watching in our own LGBTQ community, and any advice or recommendations from your seat?
Yeah, I mean, it makes me really nervous. to see so many people in our community brazenly walking down the street or even in closed quarters without masks on, not socially distancing. I understand people are tired, people are annoyed, and they want to get out and they want to live life again. And that's only going to happen if we buckle down and take this seriously. And
Interesting.
yeah, I think it does start with policy. If there are, ramifications for not following the rules, then people are more apt to follow them.
Yeah, absolutely interesting. Okay, well, let's, David, an interesting trans rights.
Yeah, speaking of marginalized parts of the community that need protection, next week we're up trans rights. Caitlyn Jenner explains why she wants Kylie and Kendall to call her dad. Watch this.
I wanted to ask you.
Uh-oh.
I know, like, sometimes...
I didn't do it.
Sometimes people get really confused when Kendall and I still call you dad.
Right.
I know we had a talk a few years ago and you were, okay with us still calling you dad, and how do you feel about that now?
I feel it was one of the best decisions I made. And sometimes this community can be pretty tough, especially when it comes to pronouns, and everybody's got an opinion, and on and on and on. But I really felt from the beginning that I got to do it kind of my way that works for me. And I think everybody out there has to do it their way.
Totally.
Which works for them. Some people say, "Oh, you're the mother." No, I'm not. I'm the dad. I've been the dad the whole way. I will be their father until the day they die or I die.
In a video posted to YouTube this weekend, Caitlyn Jenner sat down and allowed her daughter to put makeup on her for the first time. Among other topics, Caitlyn and Kylie got candid on the topic of Kylie and her sister, Kendall Jenner, still referring to Caitlyn as her dad since she's transitioned. Quote, "This is the highlight of my life," Kylie said in the video's opening, "because we've been talking about this forever. We saved this special moment for you guys because this is going to be the first time that I ever do my dad's makeup," end quote. Caitlyn made it clear, though, that she's very experienced under the powder brush. Quote, "I remember one of the girls saying, 'Well, how do you know about makeup?' I said, 'Girl, I was doing makeup 30 years before you were born,'" end quote. Caitlyn remarks laughing. The incredibly moving exchange provides a rare glimpse combining celebrity, trans issues, and family. At the end, hugging Kylie, Caitlyn said, "You guys have been my best friends. My kids have been absolutely wonderful in all of this."
Isn't that sweet? I just think that's so nice. And I think we don't often get to see any of the Kardashians like with their guards down. So maybe this kind of almost makes me like them a little bit.
Almost. Maybe.
Almost.
Maybe. It's interesting as I watched this, and this is a highly unusual story, really highly unusual. This is celebrity trans in America, arguably one of the first major celebrity trans in America in the 21st century, at least at this level. And I was thinking as I was watching this about this reference of calling Caitlyn dad, I was going to talk about the most impactful thing that Jenner did, and that was in the Olympics in Canada. And I was going to use Caitlyn's former name. And I paused myself. David, you'll be very happy about this, because being down here in South Florida and learning a lot about trans, I realized, oh wait, that's dead naming, and I shouldn't do that. And I think that's the reaction, Nick, that I agree with you on. If Caitlyn would be more vulnerable and more approachable, there would be much more support. But I think about those Olympics when she was the greatest athlete in the world. That video is just fascinating to me.
But it also just goes to show us like how fluid gender can be and how people identify in all sorts of ways. And honestly, gender's not a binary, and neither are we. So if Caitlyn wants to be called dad, then that's fine.
Yeah.
And I think it's been interesting to see Caitlyn's journey, because Caitlyn was, as an Olympic hero, the epitome of white male privilege. And even after she transitioned, she kind of thought she still had that, and was making political commentary that was damaging to a lot of the community. And when she received the backlash and realized that she was hurting people, it's good to see that she's come to understand what that did. And even though she has her own rules of life and chooses her pronouns and how people refer to her on her own terms, she has realized that it is a conversation that's different to everybody, and she doesn't have the ability to generalize for everyone. And seeing this was actually very heartwarming.
Yeah, for sure.
Very interesting.
All right, let's queer up gay culture. All right, TikTok explains the science behind why gay men move so much. Our LGBTQ media news friends over at Queerty are again presenting their Queerty Awards. At Queer News Tonight, we especially enjoy their category of favorite TikTokers. They have nominated some of the best seen in this year of our pandemic, and so we encourage you to go to Queerty.com and watch and then vote for all your favorites. We're going to show you just one example of their nominees. We, and I especially, love science, whether it's for the health and during the pandemic, or listening to Dr. Anthony Fauci or Vice President Gore on climate change. So here at Q News, we were enthralled when TikToker Rob Anderson used gay science to explain why gays move so often. Grab your iced coffee and watch this.
This is Gay Science. In today's episode, why do gay men move so often? Here are 3 reasons why. Evasion. The same way in which gay men change their appearance to escape their issues, they'll physically move spaces to avoid dealing with their personal messes. They are especially conditioned to behave this way if they grew up in a conservative household that didn't accept them. If moving away from home solved their first big problem, it will surely solve all the others. Perpetually unsatisfied, ambitious and impulsive, gay men are comfortable uprooting their entire lives for a new job or opportunity, convincing themselves they already have friends in that city, even though they only met at a circuit party once. They also have the distinct trait of finding flaws in every fucking thing, including apartment spaces. The walls are too thin, the street traffic is too loud, the exposed brick looks like an accident and not on purpose, my commute could be 5 minutes faster even though I'll always be 15 minutes late, my neighbors play Morgan Wallen. Any combination of these can send to gay packing. Personal development. Gay men change rapidly, and their spaces reflect their personal growth. An apartment they moved into 2 years ago might not fit the person they've become. If someone learns that a fellow homosexual has lived in the same apartment for 5 years or more, it's usually met with judgment or concern for their well-being.
Well, first off, shout out to Queerty. It's something that I read regularly, and I would encourage our viewers to do it. They do a great and in-depth analysis of what's going on in our LGBTQ world. To Rob Anderson, this was a great TikTok, and absolutely deserving of the nomination for Queerties, because you make fun of the science of a funny joke about gay men. Now, the guy to my right and the guy to my left, if we counted up secretly, they've probably moved 7-8 times in the last 5 years. So it's a hilarious TikTok. I enjoyed it a lot.
It was a lot of fun. I love TikTok. One of my favorites is Pammy Mac 504. She's a lesbian comedian. Right. I do watch some of the science and cooking, and TikToks, it took a while to grow on me, but there's a little bit of everything on there, and it's great to see the awards for them.
So I'm the only one here not on TikTok?
Yes.
You're not on
I
TikTok.
feel very attacked at the moment.
Oh.
No, I like Rob Anderson's videos on Instagram and stuff, though. I mean, there's actually a little bit of science behind it, too, so maybe we can get into that one day. The science behind gay science.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll take that.
Gay psychology should be its own field of study.
It is.
That's right, because it defies science. All right, well, that's our queer headlines for today, so let's catch up on the LGBTQ news surrounding COVID-19 with our special segment we call Quarantine Quickies. Tonight, we report on the devastating effects that coronavirus is having on the American and worldwide LGBTQ community in total cases and deaths. Tonight, we report that more than 1.9 million LGBTQ Americans have contracted COVID-19, and more than 33,000 LGBTQ Americans have died from coronavirus. So let's queer up Quarantine Quickies. Tonight, we report the hypocrisy of the COVID-19 relief bill versus Trump tax cuts, the $1.9 trillion contradiction. The Democrats have pushed the $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill. It's moved on this week, and it could be passed without a single Republican vote. The outcome of the bill at this hour is currently unknown, but Republicans are asking for bipartisan support, which has not been in their playbook over the last decade, by the way. Republicans also argue that the $1.9 trillion is too expensive to pass. So at Queer News tonight, we kind of return to the largest spending package ever in our history, enacted with the Trump tax relief bill. Do you remember? It was called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. It amended the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. Major elements of the changes included reducing tax rates for businesses and individuals, mostly wealthy, increasing the standard deduction, and more. The act is based on tax reform advocated by the congressional Republicans and the Trump administration. The Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, CBO, reported that under the act, individuals and pass-through entities like partnerships and S corporations would receive about $1.12 trillion in net benefits. The CBO estimates that implementing the act could add an estimated $1.891 trillion. We suggested, and we suggest rather, that 2 years ago, big Wall Street business and the top 5% of the wealthiest Americans in the United States received federal financial benefits of nearly $1.9 trillion. So it seems the spending was great for the Republicans in 2017 when it was for them. But it's not great in 2021 when almost the exact same amount of money is spending for the vast majority of Americans that have been harmed by COVID-19 and the pandemic.
And of course, the most annoying and ironic part of this, if you're one of the people who likes to file their taxes early like me, you've probably noticed that not only have the Trump tax cuts expired, but you're likely going to pay more in taxes than you have in the past, even and especially if you're the ones most impacted by COVID-19.
Exactly. If you're going to go back to evidence-based policymaking, the question is not, is this too much to spend? The question is this not enough to be spending on something like this? The only way we're going to get the economy back on track, besides getting everyone vaccinated, is get everyone back to work. And the best way to do that is through something like this.
That's an absolute bullseye. We have learned from the 2008 to 2010 Great Recession that we had, that was brought to us by George Bush, by the way, that if anything, if we could turn and get into the time machine and go back to 2008 to 2010, we would have spent more money. The Republicans artificially held down that spending package, and we would have come out of the recession much faster. On a bipartisan approach, both sides, except for those uber politicals, have said that that's what the conclusion would be. Nick's observation is exactly what will happen now. Our spending now directly affects the speed of us coming out of this, and we will continue to manage our debt in the future. But it's interesting, the Republicans cared nothing about our debt in the last 4 years. Donald Trump and the Republicans have quadrupled our debt, and it wasn't important until they're no longer in power.
Al, we're talking politics. Your facts have no power here. Be gone before somebody drops a spending bill on you, too.
Right, exactly. Well, that's our COVID-19 news for tonight. Next, we reported Happening Out Television Network that we help support our LGBTQ community. An example is Sunshine Cathedral. This is the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. We are broadcasting from our permanent set in supporting that partnership. The network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ religious broadcast in the entire world, with more than 30,000 watching every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and it is totally live. We encourage you to tune in, and our campaign of sponsorship proudly supports Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church. Watch this.
Hi, I'm Dr. Howard Grossman. I'm the medical director for Midway Specialty Care in Wilton Manors, and I'm the medical advisor for Queer News Tonight. And Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
Yeah, normally Dr. Grossman would be on Tuesdays, but since he's lounging on the socially distanced beach in Maui, we had to get him on here somehow.
Hey, how did I get to that?
But we'd also like to thank our set designer, Concepto Martin Living, here in Fort Lauderdale, for making this set in this amazing queer church campus possible.
And finally, we'd like to thank Queer News Tonight's hotel sponsor, Best Western on 95 Fort Lauderdale. This is the closest and best choice to the famous Wilton Drive, and our hosts and guests always stay at this LGBTQ ally partner.
Queer News Tonight is proud to end our show tonight with what we call the Big Finish. And we are going to show you a variety of topics that are silly or news that entertains our LGBTQ community. First up, in the Big Finish, Hungary homophobe politician is caught at a gay orgy, and it becomes ironic icon.
I didn't even know Lindsey Graham was a politician in Hungary as well.
There's Lady G.
Or Bond, she better don't.
You know, the story here is in Hungary, they're cabinet ministers that are uber anti-gay, going on Hungary, Poland, Russia, Turkey. You know, it's the toxic masculinity club countries. And there was a big orgy, gay orgy, that was hosted by a party planner in Amsterdam.
Of course.
And they got caught. And their pictures have been published. And
here we just get our politicians who hook up with people on Grindr or get caught at Iowa airports.
Exactly right. All right, the Big Finish. I loved this story. Spider-Man's Tom Holland confirms he's doing press events without pants. Don't look down.
I don't know anything about doing that. It's the whole point of being on TV. Like,
or what? But dang.
If I get angry, I can swave my sandal at people.
I'm sorry, your spidey senses are tingling.
Well, I don't know if it's
Define
my
spidey senses.
Well, this is a family
Where are
show,
they
Al. I'm
located
not sure I
on
can
your
do
body?
that.
Exactly. I love this. And who hasn't done this? If you can get away with basically wearing nothing in your Zoom meetings over the last year, who hasn't done that?
I've worn a muumuu since March, so this is the first time I put on clothes.
Yes.
The Peter Tingle, our production team is making sure to point out. And on a gay show, that means a lot.
Yes, it does. All right. In the Big Finish, the Super Bowl was Sunday. And South Florida has an interesting connection to it. My team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, not my quarterback, but boy, I'm glad he's in Tampa. But South Florida has a connection too. In the Big Finish, YouTube prankster is planted at the Super Bowl as a streaker to advertise what else? His porn website.
Yeah, his name's Yuri Andrade. Follow him on Instagram. He's a lot of fun. He lives in Boca. You know, that's where what's her name?
The streaker now?
It's true.
He's hilarious.
Now, and where was he where he talked in advance? I've heard about the bets and